We'll figure out what's going on. It'd be simple, you know.
Yeah.
Just approve it and it'll be a 10-minute meeting. We're done.
Yeah.
You know, today, very interesting council meeting last night. The 31st, no, the 21st if you're home. Anyhow, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Let me know we're okay, Leslie.
I'm pretty sure you are. Yeah.
Okay.
Looks good on my end.
All right. Okay. We'll call the meeting to order, and could I have roll call, please?
Marie Claire Gorham.
Here.
John Krischer.
Here.
Susan Murphy. Here. Phil Pardue.
Here.
Mary Jo Williams.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Same thing.
Haven't been talking yet.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
What did they add to the pledge? Which is under
All right, before we get started, we're going to have a motion again to pull item 1 and bring back at a later date the agreement between the architect and the city. So probably within the next week or two, we'll have to have another special meeting. But just if I could have a motion to
Continue to a date uncertain.
continue to a date uncertain.
I'm so moved.
Second.
All right, could I have a roll call for that?
Marie Claire Gorham.
Yes.
Susan Murphy.
Yes.
Phil Pardue.
Yes.
Mary Jo Williams.
Yes.
John Krischer.
Yes.
Approved.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to what our number one thing to hear today. Let's just receive the proposed fiscal year budget 2025 to 2026 and provide direction to staff.
Okay, so thank you for your feedback last meeting with regards to some of the uncertainties, some of which still remain, with regards to state and federal funding for services that we were receiving from them for free. So let's jump in. Overall, there's no huge major changes proposed to the budget. For those of you who've been on the board for a while or been listening to library board meetings for a long time, I usually do gentle recalibrations. Sometimes we do larger projects, and those we have asked for funds outside of the operating budget from the Carmel Public Library Foundation or looked for grant sources for those. So hopefully no major surprises when you took a look at this. With income, after talking to both president and vice president, we kind of recalibrated our expectations in particular for interest income. Another uncertainty that we are facing, it has been all over the last few years where it's been up and down coming out of the pandemic. We've seen more interest income than we anticipated because interest rates stayed higher, especially this last fiscal year when we were expecting them to come down sooner than they did, which is good. I mean, extra income is always good, but when we're talking about balancing the budget and what we should expect for next year. So we were conservative with the interest rates. They are starting to come down. They came down starting with Q2 of this year, so at the end of December. I don't have the interest rate number yet for Q3. That hasn't been published by LAIF yet, but it is starting to tick down. So we arrived at $25,000 in estimated interest income for the next fiscal year. The other place that's kind of changed and is a little variable at this point in time is income from the Friends of the Library. They're doing great with their pivot to book sales in the book room, at the farmers market, and the bookshelves in the both library buildings. This year they gave us an additional $8,000, and they're continuing to do really well. And so we're anticipating an additional $5,000 based on where they're at currently. in this year, so $35,000 total from Friends of the Library for 25-26. And then for the Carmel Public Library Foundation, I kept the ask at this point to the same amount for the last year. The previous 2 years, we had increases totaling $50,000 over those 2 years to account for inflation and cost of living increase that we hadn't seen since before the pandemic, and I think we're in a good place with that, but I will look to the Board of Trustees for direction. And then library operations is always a little variable for us. That's copy fees, and so you may see those go up and down whether or not, we have printers and things like that working. We also see funds come in from California Library Services Act that offset things like overdrive spending. Those funds are going to be going away, so you won't see those types of checks. So like the $2,500 check from CLSA will be going away. And then the other thing that goes into library operations is unanticipated donations. And again, they're unanticipated. We never know when those things are going to come in. Sometimes it's a $25 check for purchasing a book or a $100 check or no checks. So we were conservative with our estimate on library operations as well. Overall, with the interest rate staying where it is, with lower anticipated interest income, library operations lower than anticipated, but the increase in the Friends of the Library funds and Carmel Public Library Foundation, I'm anticipating $430,000 for this next fiscal year. That's an increase over this fiscal year of $1,500. So not a huge increase in income estimation. Any questions or thoughts or discussion about income before we move on to expenditures?
I think at 25,000, we could get lucky and make 30 or 31. We could use that extra 6,000 midterm if we have to make adjustments.
And we can make adjustments. Again, this is an interesting year, being that the interest rates are going to be variable, and we still don't know some of the costs, for instance, for the New York Times quite yet. I'm hoping in the next week or two we'll have those numbers from the state. We did just amend the financial policy to do quarterly reviews with regards to the CPLF disbursement in particular. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I know we do the check register and treasurer's report every month, but this will be more like mid-year budget conversations every quarter, which will be good for us during this time. Okay, so if no comments or questions about income at this point, let's talk about expenditures. As I said, no major proposed increases, decreases to expenditures for fiscal year 25-26. Administration, equipment, and IT remain exactly the same. We have been budgeting funds in the equipment budget for equipment purchases, furniture purchases, and one of the things that came up for us this fiscal year is the replacement of the circulation desk at the Park Branch Library. It's not ergonomic. It is, I think somebody referred to it as the coffin. It's this big wall between us and the kids. You can't be at eye level with them, and those are the patrons we serve in there. You can't show them how you're doing searches on your computer and how they can find books, all of those things that prevent us from doing what I think is good service in there, same way we can do at the Harrison Library, where we can show people how things work and how to do things. So we have estimates for, 3 cost estimates for different types of desks that will meet our needs in there, and numbers from the Public Works Department on the demolition of that desk, and making sure preliminarily already that we don't have wires running through the thing that will make us have to rewire half of the building, because that's more often than not the case, I find, when we try to do anything that seems simple. So we know that that won't be the case. Questions about equipment, IT, administration, budget?
So for the IT, are we buying any computer equipment, anything over the next year?
So for IT equipment, I have a proposal for that, in that we will need to do some computer replacements. And I know that Windows is shifting into a new number now, whether it's 10 or 11 at some point. That is uncertain when that's actually going to occur. I would like to, when that actually happens, because we have earmarked funds for IT purchases in the past, and due to short staffing in the IT department or other priorities they've had in the city, we've had that money go unspent. I would like to wait and see where they are in the fiscal year and do a budget adjustment and use our equipment reserve fund, because that's what it's for. We got $100,000 for reserves for equipment replacements. That's what I would propose to the board, because rather than try to set aside, I did get some ballpark numbers for them to do a wholesale replacement of public computers and staff computers, and it was about $25,000. So, and that's money that could be put towards programs or anything else we want to do that would be tied up potentially and go unspent that fiscal year.
So you mentioned the new Microsoft program. What version are we running now? Because it's 10's ending, the security support is
We're all running 10.
and 11, I mean, that's ending. They're extending that, for, I think for, we can check for a year for the security updates, and then after that, it's done. So we really have no choice but to this year update to Windows 11.
Right. We will need to update to Windows 11, and some computers will be able to handle that just fine, and some computers, we need to replace those computers.
So when you're starting to talk about replacement of certain items, you almost have to put a wedge in there into the budget, because we don't know what it's going to cost. It
Right.
could be 149% more than you think it's going to be, or it could be 10%.
Right, and that's the other...
It's not what it's going to be last year.
Exactly, and so that's the other problem, is trying to estimate that and to put that in the budget for this year. And again, thankfully, we have our equipment reserve that we could put towards these funds and then replace those funds in outlying years, as stipulated by the financial policy.
Okay.
That's what I would propose doing. I know they're coming. I don't know what the time frame is. I have costs for right now, but again, it's dependent on our IT department and Microsoft.
Well, we may
how
have
this rolls
to
out.
look at other alternatives in the city's IT department, replacing those. I mean, if
We had looked
if
in.
we're all about knowledge in a library,
Right.
we're all about public access, we don't have the luxury of building a citadel around our IT. I mean, there's things that you can do. You can unplug it from the net, you can make it more secure, you can lock it down, and you can delay the changeover. I don't think we have the luxury of doing that.
We don't have the luxury of doing that. And so we have, in the past, discussed, and maybe it's time to open that conversation up again, the library not being a part of the city's IT system, simply because of that, so that we can be more nimble and responsive, which we've been unable to do in the past
Right. So
in some instances.
fair enough. So that should be a future agenda item.
Yes, we can bring that up again. And I know that,
We discussed that about a year ago, going our own internet system.
and finding out what the costs
Yeah,
for that would
have
be,
our
and
own
private network.
IT professional take care of our own stuff. We
Yes.
can have more control over it in that aspect. But that's something that the new board could work on,
Right.
you know.
But we can agendize it for future discussion, and
No,
I
I
think
think
that
we-
we should, absolutely.
You know, capture that, you know, who would pay for the body, how we get the body. I think there's going to be an agenda item. They want to slim us down potentially. I mean, a lot of moving parts, but, you know, this is something that has been, that needs to happen this year.
Right.
The upgrade to the Windows 11, whether the city does it or we do it.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
We could bring that back next June meeting then?
Well, I mean, when it's appropriate. I mean, we have several things we need to get through. We need to get through the budget and these other things, and then maybe, you know, when it's appropriate to bring it back within the next several meetings.
Yeah.
And some of that will be dependent on when the city council makes its decisions.
Yeah. That
To
might
make
be
sure
a January, mid-year.
Well, by then, it's almost too late.
Yeah, okay.
Right. It'll be something that we probably start looking at in the fall. And I know one of the things that the council spoke about last night was approving funds for an IT audit citywide, and that's for cybersecurity. And so all of these are tied in together, and so they are looking at IT and making sure that IT has the ability to do the work that they need to do, whether that's more people or not. I don't remember if they had additional staff
Right. So
listed,
it's-
but it's critical.
and that's a good point, it needs to fit in with the city's plan.
Exactly.
But as I remember it, it was beginning in March, you had 1 year. You could buy 1 year security updates to Windows 10. And that was this past March. So if we wait to January, we're already too late. You're only 3 months away
Right.
from doing it. So this is a
a
May, June, July meeting,
Yeah.
depending on knowing what the city council is doing with the IT and making sure if they're going to make a decision, that what we believe is part of the staff report. What we think needs to happen for the library is part of the staff report that goes to the city council in time for them to consider it. And ignore it, but.
Very good. Okay, thank you. I'm going to make it. Okay.
And before we move on, just one last thought. We can go through without any city input of finding out which computers can upgrade to 11, which can't, so you at least know. Or we could know that now. We might not be able to do anything about it now, but
Right.
there's a way to do that.
Would it be the age of the computer?
No, there's you can usually run Microsoft have some kind of self-assessment program. See, is your computer upgradable to the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as we can run it with our IT policies. I mean, there are things to trip up on,
Yeah.
but there's ways to figure it out too.
I'm just used to the computer says will not update anymore.
And then it's time for a new one. Okay. Great. I'll work with IT on that and make sure everything's incorporated into city council. Moving on to programs. We're doing great. Our attendance is great. We're keeping on. We're being creative with, the types of programs that we're having. The kids library, we have our weekly story times, baby and me yoga. We have Friday afternoons at the library with games and crafts and drop-in things going on. And we're continuing to do our annual author visit, which is a great strengthener between the school district and the library. It's great to see the kids come in and be so excited about the author's books that they see on display and when they got to meet the author and hear from the author. Our teen programming continues to build. Dungeons and Dragons Club is going like gangbusters, and they actually have so many kids that want to participate. We're doing it's split off. So we're occupying the gathering place, and then we are using our meeting owl for downstairs in the teen lounge. So we have overfill area for Dungeons and Dragons. The teens continue to work on their crochet, embroidery, other arts and crafts, and it's really great because I see them. They usually have their programs on Thursdays, sometimes pop up from the teen lounge to participate in the adult programs, especially the music programs. They'll sit up in the balcony and listen in on those. The music programs at Harrison continue to be very popular. We have all different kinds of musicians coming in. The craft programs. We now have bingo night on the first Monday of the month. That's been well attended so far. We just had the second one this week. And we have, great program ideas from, one of the suggestions we got as we were building the strategic plan was dancing in the library. So we had line dancing a couple weeks ago in the reading room, which I never thought I would see the like, but it was a lot of fun. And then in terms of local history program, we continue to capture the oral history programs. We have, I think, 10 to date this year that have been filmed. And Katie, in addition to the filming of them, continues to do, when it's not possible to film them because somebody's homebound, and it's not possible for her to go to somebody's home and record there, getting interviews over Zoom or over the phone. So she's being very creative about that. She also worked this year on doing how to preserve your family treasures, working with the foundation and a genealogy program. And so we're going to keep those ones going as well. Again, very well attended. And no changes to the program budget. Any questions about programs? Let's talk about hard copy material and e-materials. So we've been talking about this since coming out of the pandemic, children's hard copy circulation, especially with the increase in program attendance, having people there at the library tend to check out books. So our hard copy circulation at the kids' library continues to be very robust. We have a great collection. It's almost, over the last 3 years been almost wholesale replaced. We have great new books coming in all the time. Graphic novels continue to be incredibly popular. Dogman, we just had a Dogman party that was packed. And we're going to continue to make sure that our collection stays fresh for our families coming in.
In the materials sent ahead, weren't you cutting back on the amount of money you were putting toward the graphic novels? I thought I saw a decrease there.
A slight decrease, and if you see any decreases in, especially kids and teen ordering, it's a space issue, so we
Okay.
trying to be creative about reconfiguring our space most of the library staff will tell you I think everybody's done a shelf shift at some point and touched every single book in that library, but we have finite space in the building, so graphic novels are one of the things where we'd have to scale back another section of the children's collection overall to increase the space for graphic novels.
So basically, we're replacing worn out.
We're replacing worn out materials and also the natural course of weeding, what isn't being circulated anymore, and keeping an eye on that. This book isn't popular anymore, it's not getting checked out. Great, now we have more space to get the latest and greatest, all of those kinds of things. So it's an ongoing thing. So we've kind of reached, our garden is in good order. We're happy with where everything is placed, nothing is overgrown, and we're holding, and we're coming out of that wholesale replacement era that we were kind of in for worn materials, out-of-date materials.
Okay.
Yep. For adult materials, we still haven't reached pre-pandemic levels of circulation, but we are seeing it goes up every year. It just didn't increase at the same rate that kids' circulation did. Part of that's due to the way that kids operate, which is they see a book, they'll check it out. Sometimes they come in with a mission, but usually adults don't browse the same way that kids and families do. So that's that part of it. Saturday hours are an obstacle to checkouts, especially for people that work. So there's that. I'm keeping hard copy circulation, the hard copy numbers pretty much the same. Some, again, dips here and there with like nonfiction, which doesn't circulate at the same rates as fiction does, or we're seeing an increase in circulation of large print. And our DVD collection, I think I mentioned somewhere in this staff report, when we get to e-materials, it's harder and harder for us to actually get DVDs. Companies they're not putting them out like they did because you can get everything on a streaming service and there's no money in it for them. So that's why you see a tick down, even though DVDs remain very popular at our library and circulate well. That's one reason for that. While when you look at the circulation statistics, and we've talked about this in the past before, making sure our spending is in balance with our circulation. And when you look at adult circulation in particular versus e-copy circulation, e-materials are circling higher, but we're spending more money on hard copy materials at this point. So we're not in balance with those. We've got 2/3 in one place and 2/3 in another place. Is this a huge problem for us? That I will leave to the board to discuss. I don't think it is. We're meeting our community's needs. We are being responsive with holds, whether they're physical or electronic. And again, we continue to see print material circulation increase gently for adults, but our library is well used. So I'd love to see those numbers be more in alignment like they used to be before the pandemic, but they're just not any longer. Any questions about hard copy material circulation? I didn't talk about teen. We're continuing to work on the teen collection. The things that circulate the best are manga and graphic novels for the teens. Fiction, not so much. And when it's fiction, it's the same favorites. I've talked about this before: Hunger Games, Harry Potter, old favorite series. And then nonfiction tends to get used in-house. And so that's a little bit harder to capture, but you'll see the books laying around. And the teen librarians worked very hard to keep that particular collection up to date. So, and we just got the new shelf in for, that was approved by the Board of Trustees as a budget adjustment, so we can increase the tiny bit more space we can eke out downstairs for the teens for their collection. So let's talk about e-materials. So our big one that we purchase materials through is the Northern California Digital Library, also known as Overdrive, also known as the Libby app. That's a consortium of libraries where we do, they do purchasing on our behalf, and then we're also able to purchase titles on top of that that are prioritized for our library patrons. If you've got a library card and we purchase a title, you get first dibs on it in the holds list. And we do participate in that, and you see that budget for that. And then those titles become available to all the other consortium members once our members have had a chance to read those. We also started subscribing, I wanted to test it out through Overdrive, to online magazines. That's called Newsstand with 2 S's. I did not misspell it. The circulation of those has been pretty robust. We haven't, if you log on to the Libby app, it's front and center there with your, here's what's trending for book checkouts, but also here's over 2,000 magazines that you can look at. With the sunsetting of Hoopla, we haven't seen any huge changes in, a huge drop in e-material usage. Overdrive's been able to fill that gap just fine. And when we talk about the Palace project, we haven't done any major purchasing through the Palace project initiative that would enable us to purchase titles through Audible and Amazon. But our Overdrive holdings do show up in Palaces. So it's another way for us to share in a more broad way throughout the state, because Northern California Digital Library is a smaller consortium, but Palace Project is all the libraries in the state can participate in it, share all their titles, and any other public domain things that are out there. At this point with Palaces, we're still unclear about what the federal and state cuts will have on that, whether that service will go behind a paywall, whether it will disappear completely, because there'll be no way to maintain servers, things like that. And so, but we still have Overdrive and Libby that, again, are heavily used by our patrons. And so if Palaces goes away, we'll be okay. I'm curious to see what a paywall would look like. Mm-hmm. So to be continued on Palaces. Right now it's just status quo, because we're just letting our Overdrive titles show up in there and letting people know that if they have a preference for using that. And I think we used to see, and I think Phil used to use these, Enki titles used to show up there, which were a provision of through the state library, and Enki has since been sunsetted. That wasn't something we had control over. There had been years back in the mid-aughts where we did use CLSA funds for Enki, but usage of that has slowly been decreasing over time, and that platform is no longer in use. Canopy it's our movie and television streaming service, and this is for public libraries and universities. It focuses on documentaries, classic films, Criterion Collection. A lot of BBC, British television, Acorn TV are available for Canopy. Our usage, when you look at the statistics for Canopy, and the spending has stayed relatively steady. It's about $2,000 a month. Sometimes it goes a little bit over that. Sometimes it dips back down. For our patrons, the BBC series remain incredibly popular. We've always had a huge contingent of Anglophiles here in the village. We saw that with DVD checkouts. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's getting harder and harder for us to get DVDs. And I would recommend keeping Canopy as a supplement to our DVD collection. And keeping an eye on it, just like we did with Hoopla, but again, we didn't see the same jump and increase the way that Hoopla did. And if we get to a place where we see major increases with Canopy, I would cap monthly spending.
Yeah.
And say we're setting it at this amount every month, and that's what this is. Their structure for individual, it's based on tickets.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than Hoopla in terms of, we could say, okay, this audiobook is $1.99 for somebody to rent from the city or from the library, or it's 99 cents, or it's $2.99. The way their system works, it's a little different. Everybody gets an allocation of tickets per month, and then the tickets are, some movies are 3 tickets, and a series might be 4 tickets. So it's a little bit different in terms of their structure. So I can't give you. It's not as clear as the way Hoopla's pricing works out. So the easiest way, if we wanted to or if we needed to cap spending, it would be a monthly cap. And again, right now we're holding pretty steady about $2,000 a month, again with some up and downs throughout the year, but no major increases.
Would the cutting the tickets back? I think you get 84 tickets or something.
We could
48 tickets, something like that, 84 tickets.
Yeah, I was looking at whether or not we would cut back tickets or cut back monthly spending, and it's easier to cap
Okay.
the monthly spending. We hit that cap.
I just wondered, because I know I have so many tickets I can use, and then every program has, some's 2, some are 4
Right.
tickets to use.
Yeah. Any questions about Canopy?
How much overlap was there in content between Hoopla and Canopy? I mean, were we ever likely to see Canopy have that same run-up? Or were people going to Hoopla for something different than they would go to Canopy, so that's why we're not seeing that increase?
Yes. So that's why we're not seeing that increase. Most of Hoopla's usage was audiobooks. The bulk of it was audios.
Right.
And it wasn't movies and television. That was a very small percentage of what people were using Hoopla for.
Okay. So, yeah, it's always good to have a backup plan, but this may not be an issue in the future.
I don't think it will be an issue in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. And then talking about e-services, we still don't have any idea yet about New York Times subscription. 60 libraries in the state have opted into further research into this, so I'm waiting to hear back about pricing. I'm hoping that will come in the next week or two, so I can have a report from the board. After speaking with the president and the vice president, I did include $2,500 as a sum to get us off and running if we need to. But again, we can pull that out at this point in time and reallocate it somewhere else. We can wait until the first quarter if they come through. I'm again hoping that by the time we meet at the end of May, I'll know what fully burdened costs are. But that's a placeholder in there for right now, based on our discussion last month about New York Times access. And then Flipster is not included in the budget for this year. So right after our meeting last month, hearing what the trustees had to say about that, I communicated that to, as part of our ongoing conversation, that the libraries who had participated in Flipster subscription and all of the libraries agreed to discontinue Flipster. That was where everybody was headed, and so Flipster has been notified, and Flipster use will sunset at the end of June. And there are a handful of titles that we won't have access through newsstand, and I'll make sure to pull those out and to notify our patrons of what titles they won't have access to online any longer. But it's 4 or 5 of them out of the 22 titles. The rest of them you can get through newsstand. And we do have print copies in-house.
Did we figure out how many people use the New York Times online?
No, that's the other thing, other piece of the puzzle that I'm still waiting for New York Times access is the statistics and the cost. So that brings me to the end of my staff report, and I'll look to all of you for further discussion about what I proposed in the overall line item budget. If you want any recalibrations anywhere, or to see anything structured
every month right now,
differently.
sorry.
We did still raise the e-material up over last year. Our budget's going to be more, right?
The e-material budget,
It was 83 last time. We were proposing 86, something this year.
yeah, we are up a little bit over there, and
Everything's
that
gone up.
part of that is the New York Times online subscriptions, that additional funds for that.
If that goes away, then we're almost what we were last year.
Yes, we are almost what we were last year. What I did with the e-material budget was I reallocated Flipster funds to Overdrive and to Canopy.
Yeah, I noticed that everything's gone up a little bit, or most everything, which is, when you look at your bills that you get at home, same way.
Yeah.
What I noticed on here, we talked about last week, or last time we met, we talked about the state park thing,
We did.
and that's not on your budget,
I
right?
didn't
Did we
include state
decide?
parks in here. That, based on the discussion last time, the Board of Trustees seemed pretty on the fence about that being an essential service for us to maintain. And so I didn't include funds for parks passes. We'll have access to those through December 30th, 2025. So that'll bridge us through the summertime and the spring.
That's if the state sunsets that. If California
This-
State Parks
the
says more next year, then.
If they
we're
can,
gonna-
if they want to keep it going, yes,
Yeah.
they can. But as far as I know right now, as of this date, that program and those passes will
Okay.
no longer be available to us for free December 31st, 2020, after that date.
Do you need a motion to okay the budget for this next, coming up? No.
Maybe next.
This
meeting
is
on the
just,
28th.
this was just a preliminary review of the
Okay.
line item budget, and for all of you to provide me with direction with regards to any piece of this, whether it's, the anticipations for income, for what I'm proposing in terms of expenditures throughout the budget.
Right, and to provide the Library Foundation
Right.
a guide before their meeting.
Right,
The finance
exactly.
meeting's coming up, so
And at this
there was going
point-
to be a big ask, we needed to make sure we got it to them ahead of
Yeah,
time.
right, exactly. And at this point, there is no big ask.
I
It's
think
status
we're-
quo from the previous year.
Yeah. We'll be able to handle it right now the way it is, without asking any more money from them. Because we have a few built-in things which we could get more off of interest, and we could get more out of Friends of the Library, which would probably help us out quite a bit.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
fine
doing
with this,
really well.
but I have a question.
Please.
And I was just thinking about, because the last discussion we had was around the strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in this budget specific to that. And yet, and I think most of it just kind of gets folded in. But it felt like these are two big pieces of work really to sort of reconcile. And is there any reconciliation needed to think about that at all?
So, yes, there is, and it's, and thank you for asking the question. So, there are a number of things in the strategic plan that are procedural or operational that won't cost us money.
Yeah.
The other thing that you might not see, and I can do better about calling it out, and especially when I bring this back to you for final consideration, is I have all of these things in my head when I think about program budget, and we've got that list of programs, and the staff is aware of them. So you might not see it called out explicitly in here, but I am thinking about it as we are doing these things. And if it would be helpful, I can tease some of those things out year over year, especially if they're new initiatives, and budget for them separately.
Yeah, I don't know that they need to be budgeted separately, but it's just a question in my mind, how do you, because this is sort of day-to-day operations in my head. And then you've got the strategic plan sitting here, and there is crossover, obviously. So where does that fit? And it just, I think, in my head, it also helps me remember that there's those things that we listed out
Right, that we're gonna
in the
do.
strategic plan to accomplish this year, next year, the year after. So how does that you know, do we need to budget or not? And I don't know that we do, it's just a question.
It is, so I'll go back to the olden days when I was
Okay.
a baby local history librarian. And so what we all as staff used to do is, I mean, what I would do when I would go through and do my budget request to the library director was say, okay, what on this strategic plan falls in my purview for this year?
Yeah.
I need to be working towards that, and does it have a cost? And if it does, I'm going to ask the library director for X amount of funds to start the oral history program or to buy new shelves for the local history department to expand our collections. So it's kind of a give and take with the staff and I think that I can do a better job of addressing that in my staff reports as to like, here's what we're going to be doing in this year, and that this is what is going to be fulfilled in the budget requests.
Okay.
So
That's
I
great.
will do that. It's kind of just a thing that happens in the background for
Right,
us, but
right.
it's, and especially with the new strategic plan, it's, we'll work on that.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anything else, equipment except the $14,000 for the desk that you're looking at?
No, not besides the conversation we had about IT and the computers,
Okay.
but it's just the circulation desk at this point.
There's no need for more shelving in the children's library for more books? Because you said there's a,
No, it would be, and I did ask about that and talk to the children's librarian about that, you know, or do we need more movable shelves? But with the story time room and the layout of that room and the flexibility, it's working right now to be able to shift things around, and additional shelves would gum things up, for lack of a better way to say that. So,
is-
but it will keep looking at it.
okay. In other words, it's working now. Why mess with it?
Sort of, yes. But again, we're always looking at ways to move the collections around and do that, so we're
Okay.
not sitting around complacently. If there's a way for us to fix it and add more room in for graphic novels, we'll figure it out.
I only asked that question because I'm down there on Fridays. I see these kids walking out with big bags full of books.
Yeah.
I'm amazed how many books.
Yeah, I
go
mean-
out on a Friday afternoon. You would really be surprised.
If
There's
everybody-
a lot of books leave.
Yeah, if everybody turned in their books all at once, kind of like we saw during the pandemic when we opened the book drops again, it was like, oh boy, there was no room on the shelves anywhere. You know, half of our collection is out somewhere in the community.
Yeah, that's great.
It is great. It's how it should be. All right, any other comments or direction with regards to the budget?
All right, then we could probably adopt it next meeting on the 28th.
Yes, and if either,
So-
and any of you have any other thoughts or comments, send me an email, stop by my office, let me know, so I can incorporate
No,
it
it's-
into the final budget and final staff report.
Sounds good.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the last item. Receive a report out on the City Council fiscal 25-26 proposed budget, discuss, provide staff a direction, and any response, any proposed changes in the library services. I was at the council meeting last night, and so was Ashley. I think that hold fast on this because everything's kind of in flux, right?
Yeah, so the city council received their recommended budget for next fiscal year. I did email you the link to that staff report. They're shifting kind of how they've done budgeting in the past, where they took a very conservative stance and often saw funds at the end of the year that went into fund balance. They're moving towards expending all of their funds by the end of the fiscal year and being slightly less conservative. They are also moving towards a model. They amended their financial policies to take on, fruit fly here, spending 90% of the budget on operating expenditures, operations, and 10% on capital outlay, and making sure that we are calibrated for that. As it stands right now with the recommended budget, we're at 92% operating and 8% for capital outlay. They want to recalibrate that. One of the thought exercises is a financial stewardship working group that was formed. That's Council Member Booter and Mayor Pro Tem Delves, who have been working with our finance manager to comb through the budget and figure out ways to cut. I think I've mentioned to all of you this before, but the pension liabilities are going to be creeping up for the city. Costs are rising. Tariffs are going to cause havoc, I'm sure, with capital programs. And so they're looking, the city's in good financial standing as of this year, but it is going to get trickier and trickier as years go on to continue to pay for everything. So they're starting to look at ways to tighten belts starting this fiscal year. One of the things that so with the 92% and the 8% being out of whack with the 90-10, that's a $600,000 difference. And so they are looking at ways to make up that difference. So where would those cuts come from? Two places that they propose that affect the departments that I run are community activities, whether it's scaling back on a certain number of events or elimination of the department altogether, but also a $50,000 reduction in the library budget, which for us means staffing, and a potential reduction in hours. There are also other things that they had proposed in that staff report, which is, elimination of different positions in other departments, services across the board. So they are considering different methodologies for this, but I want the Board of Trustees to be aware that this conversation is going on. We still don't have Saturday hours, and that is a sticking point, and that is, a union issue at this point. So this is something that needs to be resolved by the staff. But that's where we're at right now. I would encourage you all to attend, if you can, upcoming budget meeting. There's going to be a workshop on May 21st, 3:30 here in council chambers, where they're going to have an in-depth discussion. Prior to that, you can also submit your budget questions. I don't know if the board has any questions at this point, but be thinking about those things. Again, if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at that staff report, please do. In the instance that we do meet next week, this is something I can include on the agenda, and I say next week in the hopes that we will have the architect agreement ready for our review, but it's something that we can discuss in terms of questions, or if there's any transmittal that we want to make to the council with regards to that proposal that they had as one of, and again, that's amongst a number of different strategies to get to that $600,000 to get in balance.
Yeah, it looked like some of the options would get you there pretty quick. There was one that was worth over 690 some odd thousand that you could do.
Mm-hmm.
It looked a little bit like a different, changing in the way you do some accounting.
Right.
Being more aggressive. And when you put that against all the options and you look at the library hours, that's, is the juice worth the squeeze at that point? You're going to make folks mad because you're closing the hours, and
right.
You're not getting much budget relief out of it, which I find kind of interesting.
Yep, but that's one of the things that they did put on the table, and I wanted the board to be aware that that's part of the discussion. So that
I will say that I don't know what the union, how that interacts with Saturday hours or things like that, but it becomes, if they do decide to enact a manning cut for the library, it's much harder to defend if you're only pulling back hours Monday through Friday. If you're going to say you're going to eliminate Saturday hours,
that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Right, because I'm not sure that the community would really notice if you cut back an hour a day, because they can still get in there. But if you cut out a day, that makes a big difference. So the union may be cutting off their nose to spite their face here on this one.
Potentially.
Potentially,
Mm-hmm.
As they go.
Well, council did bring up that they're hearing a lot about Saturday hours.
Right, but I mean, if the
Councilman Bruner brought
union's
up
making
that
this
there's-
impossible
Right, then that's,
financially,
yeah.
I mean, that's all I hear is, why not Saturday hours? We worked hard. We got council to hire 4 part-timers so we could have Saturday hours. Then we ran into a roadblock. But the Board of Trustees, we did our job. We got 4 people hired by the city to have Saturday hours, and now it's out of our hands. I mean, we've done what we possibly could do, because I don't know about you, but I hear from everybody, why not Saturday hours? And I think it's disgraceful, but that's just my opinion, that we don't have Saturday hours.
So I think it'd be, if it's appropriate, I mean, don't want to get upset negotiations or everything like that. I think that once the new board sets, this should be one of the first things on the agenda so they understand the implications, why we can't get Saturday hours and what the different moving parts are.
I think that would be important for them to understand as well. And I will make sure that that is on the agenda for when the new board is seated.
Right. June or July or whenever that is.
Okay, so then we'll just leave this as it is right now, and I would encourage you to follow along, and, you know, if and when we meet and I have any updates, I will provide those to you. Good.
All right.
Does the foundation have anything?
Do you have anything to
We
say?
never
Alex?
Oh, this is oh, it's because it's a special meeting. We didn't have the foundation report out like we usually do, but
She's listened to the whole conversation.
yes.
Poll sounds reasonable.
Public appearances, yes.
I would say one thing about, if you're thinking of New York Times, if that's something I know that Phil expressed the importance of and different publications, you know, I would say that the foundation, I'm speaking for the foundation, that we would be able to make sure that that remains. It's important.
Okay. Thank you very much.
In that instance, if I get the numbers prior to our next meeting, I'll be sure to share those with Alex if it's a number that is, so that she's aware if we need to do a larger increase or anything more than what I've projected.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then meeting adjourned. Thank you for all your help today.
I have a couple of things. I'll see you tomorrow, right? Also, I won't be able to come next Wednesday to the meeting.
Okay.
So if you have, because I have a mammogram, and to reschedule that is, you know, forever. You don't want to do that because it took me 6 months to get this appointment.
You know,